Now I want you to think about the colleagues at work or your peers in grad school. Don't think about ethnicity or gender, just think about them. And out of that group of people, you'll instantly know that there's a few of them that stand out to you as leaders. I mean, they are crushing it. They're overachievers. They're always tapped at work to contribute to a new initiative. They're always working on a cause, fighting for a cause, leading an event. People go to them for advice and coaching. They always try to get you involved, which is really annoying sometimes. And they always have time to roll up their sleeves, no matter what's going on. Have you ever wondered why that is? Now I'm going to tell you something that's really controversial in a room of Asians. Most of us, most people, will strive to be average. No, don't look over your shoulder. I'm talking to you. Don't give your neighbor the side eye. I'm talking about us. Most of us strive to be average. And before BJ gives me the hook to get off the stage, here's what I mean by average. You'll have good jobs, steady careers, money. If you haven't already, you'll get married, you'll have kids, buy a nice house in a good school district, you'll drive a BMW. And for almost everyone, that life is not considered average. That is the pinnacle of the American dream. It's a great life. But when I consider the collective financial means, high intellect, and the core values of the Asian American community, I know we can and should do more. We should achieve more. And in this fast-paced, ever-changing world, I realize for the values that are important to me, if I don't take a leadership role, nobody else will. And I'm not saying there aren't people out there who are leaders, building our community, working for our communities. But the combination of things that are important to me will be slightly different from everyone else in this room. And I can't expect anyone to take leadership to address my global concerns. I need to own it. And just to give you a little bit of background about myself, anyone in here born and raised in this country by immigrant parents? Almost everybody. You know how it is. Our family culture was focused on money, academics, and maintaining ties to our culture. My family owned motels. My maiden name is Patel. So take that stereotypical Asian American upbringing and situate it in Idabel, Oklahoma, population 8,000, miles away from anywhere. At that time, there were only 3 other Asian families in town. Most people thought I was Native American when I said I was Indian. And although I had a generally positive childhood, I did witness my parents were very conservative and very protective. They did everything possible to make me uncool. They made me wear either traditional Indian garb or clothes purchased from Walmart, neither of which appealed to my fashionista vibes. My mom was not about to spend hard-earned cash on Reeboks. There was no socializing with friends outside of school, and dating was a complete no-no. Don't get me wrong, I love my parents, and I'm sure many of you get as emotional as I do when I think about the sacrifices our parents made to raise American children on Asian values. And so I'm not here to talk about my scars from my teenage years, although to this day, I don't like wearing Indian clothes. Because of my strict environment, however, I really had to get creative in teenage socializing. I was allowed to partake in any activities that were related or connected to school. So I signed up for everything. Student council, editor of the yearbook, academic bowl, pageants, Future Business Leaders of America, science club, everything. I swear, if I had a dog, I would have been part of Future Farmers of America. I would have done it just because I wanted to be part of something. And even though I was very active in school and I had a lot of friends, I always felt a little bit different. And when you're in high school, you don't want to be different. You want to blend. You just want to blend in and not get noticed for something about you being different. And I was not blending. But one of the most defining experiences of high school occurred when I was selected to participate in Oklahoma Girls State. Girls State is a national, for those of you who don't know, it's a national leadership program for girls sponsored by the American Legion Auxiliary. We basically spend a week campaigning for local and state office and then run the government. I was in heaven. I was among my people. like-minded young women leaders. They got me, and I got them. And what I discovered was that the reason why I wasn't blending in high school was not because I was wearing Indian clothes. I wasn't blending because I was presenting myself in the context of my background versus theirs. Instead, when I began to take on leadership roles and work on issues that we had in common, I was viewed as a leader, just like my peers. I shared the same ideals and concerns as my mainstream American peers. And I also learned that the path to leadership is mainly showing up and taking ownership. So fast forward a decade to when I was working in Chicago. I was in a new city, I didn't know a lot of people, and I was trying to meet more people. And one of my friends invited me to a happy hour, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll come. The happy hour just happened to be sponsored by an organization much like Ascend, the Network of Indian Professionals, or NEDUP. It's a national organization that at its peak had an outreach of up to 50,000 up-and-coming Indian American professionals across North America. It started in Chicago, and the initial premise was simple. If we create a forum for Indians to network, we might also find our life partners. One of the most important aspects, took you a while, right? One of the most important aspects of our organization was that we used the word professional. Historically, Indians of my parents' generation generally socialized with other people from their region of India. So Gujaratis socialized together, Tamilians socialized together. It's not the case for Indian Americans. By calling ourselves Indian professionals, NEDUP attracted individuals who were proud of their heritage but did not want to be identified by a particular region in India. We were, after all, living in the United States. Another important aspect of this growth was our comfort in combining social with the professional. We fully embraced that initial premise that people were coming to NEDUP events because they wanted to meet friends and they wanted to meet other men and women. But it quickly evolved to something so much more, and we used that platform to branch out into pillars of community service, professional development, and socio-political awareness. We expanded to 30 chapters across the country. NEDUP was a very unique organization at the time, and it filled a very big void. If you were Indian American in your mid to late 20s, how did you meet other Indian Americans? Well, you heard about NEDUP through a friend, and you came to a monthly happy hour, and that was the start. Oh, and our happy hours? 400 people, easily. There was always somebody new to meet. I was leading the Chicago chapter before I moved on to the national board, and around that time, NEDUP started experiencing growing pains. The local chapters were very successful at driving engagement locally, but we weren't sure if we could mobilize that group of 50,000 people at once. We were loosely connected as chapters, and there was no oversight by the national board. We really lacked consistency in our messaging, and there was a lot of disagreement about what our mission should be. We needed a formal governing body to ensure our future growth. So I did what any other leader would do. I took the reins to lead our restructuring, defining how our operations would work. Mind you, I didn't have any more experience running a large organization than anyone else. I just had the drive and the tenacity to really commit to NEDUP's mission and take it to the next phase. I didn't know any other chapter officers outside of my own city, but I took the time to get to know them, get to know what their markets were like, and to understand that to build a national organization. After 6 months, we passed the proposal for restructuring, and we approved a central governing board, and I was selected their first national president. And it was truly gratifying. And those leaders, those chapter officers who were part of the restructuring with me, still talk about how great it was to be a part of something special. The coming together of people for a common cause, that we made a difference, that we became lifelong friends as a result. For me, I joined NEDUP to meet other Indians in Chicago who had similar interests. Moving to a national stage was never in my line of sight, but as anyone would tell you, it was the right thing to do. The whole experience shaped my career. I got my MBA from Babson, Ian. And I became an expert on organizational effectiveness, taking companies through change. And I wasn't just the first NetUp president. Like a lot of our members, I also met my husband there too. And you may not realize it sitting here today, but these days that you spend coming to a conference to network, learn, grow, and yes, maybe meet your life partner, those days are very special. And these experiences are not available to you as you get older and further develop your careers and personal networks. One of the challenges that we have in this country is continually investing in groups like Ascend and NetUp. Even though our population of Asian Americans continues to grow, we have underinvested in community organizations that cater to our community. We have not yet organized ourselves to maximize our full financial and political power. And that's what I mean when I say that many of us strive to be average. Once we buy our nice house, we stop taking initiative because we feel like we've made it. We've worked hard and this is the pinnacle of life. We get this nice house, our nice family, and we're happy. But I really think that we need to take greater ownership. You came to an Ascend conference on a Saturday. I can guarantee you that there is nobody else in the greater Boston area that cares more about the Asian American community than this group here does today, because you took the time to show up. And if you don't, nobody else will. And I can talk all day. I can keep going on and on about NetUp and the comparisons with Ascend, but I really want to tell you a little bit about two other endeavors that I recently participated in. A couple years ago, I got involved with Girl Rising. It's a movement to empower girls everywhere. It's a movie that tells the story of girls who overcame tremendous odds to thrive. These stories are narrated by Hollywood actresses like Meryl Streep and Kerry Washington. If you've never seen it, you can probably find it on Netflix, and it will be one of the best 90 minutes you'll ever spend. Unfortunately, India is part of the world where a lot of women are systematically and historically marginalized. The Girl Rising creators decided to make an Indian version of the movie narrated by Bollywood stars. I joined the Global Advisory Board for Girl Rising India to mobilize support, and I chaired a fundraising event to launch the movement in Boston. Personally, I'm a feminist. The idea that women still struggle to achieve the same rights as men is completely ludicrous to me. And I wasn't even raised that way, even though I tell you that my parents were very strict and overprotective. They did not raise me like that. And if I truly care about the plight of women around the world, then I can't ignore when someone asks me to get involved and help. Over the course of my involvement with Girl Rising, I met some famous people. I got to meet Frida Pinto and Miss America. But more importantly, we connected a new generation of leaders in Boston to an important cause and movement. And there are a lot of people who could have helped with Girl Rising, but I was asked. And if I didn't do it, if I didn't take leadership, I couldn't assume that somebody else would and then still be honest with myself that I was doing everything I can to fight for a cause in which I believed. Lastly, my talk today would not be complete without including the Women's March for America and that incredible mobilization effort that occurred last January. How many of you participated in the march? A couple people. Great. Fantastic. Women around the world mobilized from mid-November last year to January 21st to protest the outcome of the presidential election and raise awareness about women's rights. Over 2 million Americans marched. In Boston alone, nearly 200,000 people marched on the Commons in an amazing display of citizenship, patriotism, and democracy in action. For me, I didn't want to just march. I had to be part of this movement, so I joined the Boston Planning Committee and organized the South Asian Coalition. Again, it wasn't like there were a million Indians trying to sign up and let me be the leader and let me organize the coalition. I just had an idea. I went to the organizers and they said, run with it. It was a very fluid grassroots movement that mobilized quickly. The entire organization process was amazing, and we had a small regional steering committee of highly impressive women from across Greater Boston. We pushed our titles and egos aside to mobilize for a much greater cause than ourselves at a time when the country needed a big show of strength by women. You didn't need a title to exhibit leadership. You just showed up and took a stand. If anything, the Women's March is a great example of what I've been talking about. Across the country, people are realizing that they cannot rely on others to impact change in their lives. You have to take ownership. If you want to see this change, you need to do it. And if we don't do it, no one else will. Lastly, as I was preparing for these remarks, I've thought about the countless times when I was faced with an opportunity to lead, to take a stand. Nothing bad would have happened to me if I had said no and just gone about my way. But I found when I took ownership, my life changed for the better. And I was living my core values. And in my mind, I would have been average if I had ignored it. And I don't want to be average. And I hope you don't either. I want you to be that friend or colleague who always has time to roll up their sleeves and lead and participate. Enjoy the rest of the conference and your weekend. Thank you for listening.